Hey guys, welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. My name is Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we are going to go over our big board. We did top 50 for this class, and we're going to go over looking at some of the other guys that are the main draft analysts in this Mel Kiper, Daniel Jeremiah, PFF. So we'll compare to theirs, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all guys that you've heard before if you've looked at our positional rankings, but we just want to give a range of outcomes and put them in tiers, so to speak, 1 to 50, just showing where you think how high we are on these guys. Obviously, we've glossed over them before, but it's really exciting. We're going to get right into it, and let's just get on the board.
So
So kicking it off at number 50, we're going to go with Mike Sainristil from Michigan. He's been one throughout the pre-draft process that's kind of risen in a lot of people's eyes. Great character, just very productive guy on one of the top defenses.
yeah, I mean, basically with him, how I look at it is like he's a really good football player, and when we talk about Mel Kiper and we talk about Daniel Jeremiah, they don't really see him as high as we do probably. But he's one of the hardest guys to rank, if you ask me. Like he could be, in the 30s, or he could be closer to 80 on some boards. It's just because of the position that he plays. He plays nickel more so than anything. That's where he'll fit at the next level. But I mean, I don't really think you can't put him on this list because of the fact that high character, like you said, graded out tape wise, like as one of the best players. He's a little bit older, so that helps, of course. But yeah, I find it hard to leave him off this list
for sure. Yeah, and then Braden Fisk, who he kind of rose almost a little too much from the combine after having one of the fastest 40s among all D linemen, and he's kind of settled out a little bit. We don't really see him at the end of first round mocks anymore, like we shouldn't.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that he won't be a very early day 2 pick at some way, shape, or form.
Even 49 is a rise, that's the thing. I actually have the list right here of our comparison to the other guys that we're comparing our list to. Daniel Jeremiah has Braden Fisk a little bit higher than us. He has him at 38 on his big board, and then PFF also has him at 38. That kind of tells you that that's where he rose. He probably rose to like 32, and now people are coming back on him. We just never got that high. He's going to be a good player. He's a second-round player, though. I don't think he's a first-round player. He still has a lot of issues with his limits. But his motor and his style of play are going to be awesome. And that's what we like to see, because sometimes you can overcome some of those athletic ability issues with that just high motor, high pace type of play.
Right. So. Yeah, and then Junior Colson, one of our top linebackers, obviously cracking the top 50. We really like him as a player. Don't think that any of these guys, at least 45 or 46 through 50 rather, probably have a chance of being a first round pick at this point. But we really like him as a day 2 pick.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that we still have a lot of questions on. Didn't force turnovers, didn't have any sacks, but just linebacker. Has the size, has the speed, has the capabilities. Now we need the production. Played for Michigan defense that had a lot of really good players. Sometimes you just don't get the opportunities because you have so many good players making plays all the time. But he's a really good player, and he's got a couple more linebackers on this list, but he could, at the end of the day, be the number 1 linebacker in this class on some boards.
Right. Yeah, and then just want to touch a little bit on a trio of receivers in this 41 to 50 range. You got Xavier Legette, Xavier Worthy, and then Keon Coleman. Obviously, we are lower on Worthy than others. We expect him to be very much in the first round range.
Right.
Not necessarily a lock, but very, very close to that, just based on the buzz. Just kind of break down a little bit, give a tidbit of each of these three, because we all like them, but they've all had flirtations of first round buzz, and then 2 of them have tailed off as we've kind of gone on.
Yeah, let's just say Mel Kiper has him ranked 17th on his report. Mel Kiper only does 25 ranking players ranked, but he's 17th. We obviously don't have him that high. That puts, I believe that makes him the 5th wide receiver or 4th wide receiver on Mel Kiper's board. He's not even close to that on ours. But it's more of the problem of, we knew he was fast. Seeing it, watching him do it are great, but then also I have the issue with the size. I have some issues with other things. He's probably a number 2, and he's really just a guy that has to fit into your offense. You have to find the fit. We talk about this on other shows. Kansas City, everybody wants to pencil him there, and it's a fit thing. He's probably not at 32 at this point because so many people move speed up their board so much. But good player. Just probably a second round talent. Xavier Legette has all the natural athleticism, but I just want him to do it for longer than 1 year. I think that's a big thing for him. He's at South Carolina. He did it for 1 year. Before that, he was a special teams guy. This is a 5th year. He's a much older prospect. So I guess I could not put him as high as Xavier Legette on Mel Kiper's board as 25th.
Yeah.
But in Daniel Jeremiah doesn't have him ranked in his top 50. So it's kind of one of those guys.
It's very polarizing of all because as much as we talk about, they're having 6 or 7 wide receivers go off the board in the first round. Right. We're going to have more than that in the second round. And then there's going to be a good amount in the third round. So all of these guys will be off the board, before we even hit the third round. But unless something comes out
of course,
that has them falling. But there's just a plethora of receivers, and we're just trying to find wants to separate themselves. Another one we won't talk about, but Ricky Pearsall has been really rising up a lot of boards of late. Over the last couple of weeks, I've seen him early day 2 pick, like in the 30s. So that just kind of shows how the depth at the position, and it'll be interesting to see where they fit, and that's kind of how we'll probably judge them, as the place and where they go and how they'll produce from there.
Right.
So jumping up, kind of group them together a little bit at 45, Darius Robinson, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., number 43, a couple of Missouri guys. We like them both. Some of them have gotten first-round buzz as well. Just give us a little bit about those 2 players.
Well, I think with Ennis Rakestraw, we had him going in one of our drafts in the first round. Of course, that has to do with position fit and stuff, but, we probably had him a little bit closer to the 30 range earlier in the process. Hasn't done anything, though, during this pre-draft process to stand out, while other guys have. And that kind of hurt him in totality. But, a stingy corner. I love watching him, come down. He loves playing the run. He's one of my favorite players that without the athleticism, right? But definitely a guy that, has the length and stuff, has the style of a press man. And what we do, and when we, look at these guys, is those are the guys you really look for when you go into the draft. Can this guy play on an island if he needs to? And at times, yes. But at other times, I worry about him. So that's why he's here. He could be a little bit higher, but I think this is a pretty good fit spot-wise. And then, like you said, Darius Robinson, he's one of the guys that has been lower on our board compared to others. He's a tweener, and that makes it kind of hard sometimes to figure out what he's going to do. A team's got to pick him and then put him in a position where he can succeed. He basically can play from 2 technique to 7 technique, and teams are going to see him, in different ways. I actually see him as a D lineman, and a lot of people are mocking him as an edge.
Right.
And I think that's a big difference. If he was an edge, I think he probably is higher. But I'm not seeing the same production that other people are seeing his ability at edge, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people really kind of place him in the 26, 27 range in some mocks. But one of them has him as a D lineman, and one of them has him as an edge. So just like you said, it's very tough to place, and that's what kind of gives us a little bit of concern to keep him down a little bit. And then as we in this range, just want to bring up Kamar Lassiter, number 46, and then Tavondre Sweat, 42, who is one that's been really polarizing as well. and then also coming off the field issue that he is dealing with over the last week.
Right. So Tavondre Sweat is probably higher than anybody has him right now on our board. And we can always go to a lot of people like placing players based on where they think they're going to get drafted. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it based on how good a player is. And Tavondre Sweat is a much better player than not ranked on both Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah's boards and 74th on the PFF board. With that being said, a lot of his concerns, if you want to take into the concern of, his outside of football concerns, okay, DWI, I believe. We're not going to get into that. That's not nothing to do with us. But we've seen guys have issues off the field and been really good football players. Jeffrey Simmons comes to mind. Fell way too far in that draft and the Titans got a steal. I just don't want people to overlook Tavondre Sweat in that way because he is a really good football player and he plays at a size that is hard to stop at that level or at any level. And the concerns with him are he's going to have to come off the field. Well, he didn't have to at UT. So until I see that, I'm not going to push him down my board just because of it.
Exactly, because you will see later, Byron Murphy, playing right next to him. He was the one that was just as productive, and he was the one that was the defensive player of the year in Big 12. So, there's a lot to like. The only thing is just being able to translate over the next level. We don't see the just big burly defensive tackles like the Vince Wilforks anymore that just kind of plug the middle and take on two blockers. But there could be a revolution. Who knows? He is much more athletic.
Yes,
of course. We saw the equivalent of like his 40 time compared to guys who are like 180 pounds, and it's faster on a per weight to where he is basis. So
yeah, his 40 was like a 4.28 or something for a 180 pounder. So his athleticism is there. You think Albert Hainsworth, like that's kind of the idea of like Albert Hainsworth was really good, and then he stopped caring, and all of a sudden he wasn't good anymore. Basically, that's your coin flip with Tavondre Sweat. Because we've seen it, and we haven't had a guy that's done it since then. I guess that's not true, but Tavondre Sweat sitting at 380 probably when he plays is a lot of weight, and so keeping him on the field is a big concern. So
for sure, yeah. So we'll jump into the 31 to 40 range. We'll start it off. Troy Franklin out of Oregon. He's a guy that's been very up and down, so to speak, throughout this process. We still really like him as a prospect. He was very, very productive with Bo Nix over the last couple of seasons. Give me your thoughts on him, and do you think that he's one that it's warranted where he's at?
Well, I think he's even dropped more on most boards, which is kind of crazy to me because of the fact that yes, he had a poor combine. He could have been considered in the Brian Thomas tier, I guess, prior to that, and now he's not anymore, which is fine. Brian Thomas excelled, and Troy Franklin dropped a little bit, but there are so many good wide receivers in this class. That's more of the reason why he dropped, and why people are putting him so much farther down is because they're like, well, is he better than this receiver? Is he better than this receiver? And then they're kind of tiering them together. Troy Franklin's a really good football player, and we need to not forget that he was basically one of the driving forces on why Oregon was so good this last year. He was the big play threat, difference maker down the field for them, and so he definitely should not be overlooked, is all I'm saying. He could be a guy that slides into the first round. So
yeah, and then we'll move on. 39, Jordan Morgan, offensive tackle, and then I'll also group in Tyler Guyton just as an example because I feel like they're very far apart in a lot of people's boards, but we have them much closer together, and a lot of it's just because of Tyler Guyton just being so, I guess, unpolished.
So yeah, Jordan Morgan is 49th on Daniel Jeremiah's board, while Tyler Guyton is 23rd. I just don't think that that's realistic. I know that Tyler Guyton is like this projection monster. He has all the tools. He's super athletic. He's got this, long arms. But at the same time, he hasn't done it. He hasn't done it for very long. and he hasn't been, exceptional by any means. Just honorable mention Big 12. Hasn't stood out. He played for Oklahoma. It's a good team. You'd expect him to they get ballots. They get the opportunity to put more people on those all Big 12 teams, and he's just not there. And so I guess I worry that he can't ever find it, because he's probably one of the guys that needs to sit for a year. Well, if he's a top 25 draft pick,
it's hard to project that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how are you going to be like, oh, well, we need this guy to sit behind somebody for a year? That was like the Andre Dillard experiment in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
He went at 25, I believe, ish. They traded up for him and everything. So I just think that this is one of those guys that if you really think he's going to be good, you have to let him take his time before you just throw him into the fire. With Jordan Morgan's actually more ready right now. He's a little bit older. He's not as athletically tooled, but he's got good patience. He's a good pass blocker. Played in the Pac-12. Played well. I mean, yeah, they might be farther apart just on projections, but if you go Jordan Morgan over Tyler Guyton, and you get a guy that's consistent and all year, every year, or you get a guy that could be a top 10 tackle, or a guy that's out of the league in a year or a couple years. So that's kind of where the problem is with this like grouping, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and then want to talk about. I think these are a couple of fun players. We like them a good amount. TJ Tampa out of Iowa State, and then Adrian Cooper out of Texas A&M. Very interesting players. I'm not sure if they will crack the day one draft range, but really exciting players that I think can contribute right away.
Yeah, I think, if you look at TJ Tampa, I wanted the competitiveness more, but he has all the like natural ability to just be an island corner. He is the guy that if he would have played better and been like able to break the next tier, he's in the conversation with our, 1 through 5, which are really close players in most regards. We don't necessarily have them tiered and positioned that way, but when TJ Tampa, if you said, oh, well, would you rather have TJ Tampa or Taron Arnold to go cover one-on-one all game? Well, it's actually a lot closer mentally than you think, because TJ Tampa actually has the body frame, the speed, the ability, more than a guy like Taron Arnold, who actually did it, better. But he's an exciting player, and he's a little bit on projections too, and if you can get the most out of him. While Adrian Cooper, you have no problem getting the most out of. That dude is there to fly around and hit people. I wonder, though, if he's just a hammer all the time, and if he can play zone, if he can drop into coverage, if he can play a little bit of that stuff, or if he's basically just your spy the whole game. Kind of like what we feel like Devin White is turned into.
Or even Kenneth Murray, even more recently.
Right, even Kenneth Murray.
That was one that I was really high on, that was surprised that he kind of struggled transitioning to the next level.
Yeah, and I think that has a little bit to do with the Los Angeles scheme that we always talk about. But at the same time, yes, they are very similar in that way. But I mean, Adrian Cooper is going to give you everything he's got all the time. So he's an exciting player for sure.
Absolutely. And then want to talk about Chop Robinson, Tyler Nubin. That's a fun name that I was surprised was as high as it was, but it's warranted because of how talented he is. It's just when you think about this class, obviously safety is the weakest of the bunch. But, he's risen as high as, there's 32 first-round picks. He's in the top 32. So, that's right in the ballpark where we think he'd be going is early day 2. Some even have him now as a late first-round pick. I just don't see the fit yet, but Chop Robinson, on the other hand, he's a guy that's one of those projection edge rushers that is really relying on his athleticism, and a lot of people do like him going in the first round right now. I've seen a lot of people putting him to Tampa.
Yeah.
So just kind of gloss over those guys a little bit.
Well, I think let's try to start with Chop. I mean, he has all the athleticism. He's like the guy that, it's kind of funny. We always talk about you look at a guy when he's on the field and you're like, wow, that guy's crazy. Well, he walks out there, no gloves, no sleeves, freezing cold in Penn State, and he just, he's just out there, just bare hands hitting people. I'm like, goodness gracious, this dude's different. So, I think that's pretty cool, of course. But yeah, going back to actual football ability, he is an amazing pass rusher with very little moves. He is a projection project type of guy, but if he reaches his ceiling, he's most likely the best edge rusher in this class. And that's the hardest part about him. He could be a complete Tyler Guyton-esque bust, or he could be the best edge rusher in the class. And so that's one of the things that with him, Penn State just knows how to get athletes. I think they have a hard time sometimes creating and building an athlete into an actual football player. We see that with a lot of the guys that are coming out this year and in recent years. Owe, that went to Baltimore, I believe he had 0 sacks his senior year. And that's crazy to me when he's a first-round draft pick, but it has to do with the fact that they're just not developing the same way. That's off my tangent. But so I think Chop Robinson has a lot of good, but there's a lot of bad also. And we just have to also, he doesn't play all 3 downs all the time. That's another thing we worry about. Like when you're getting a pass rusher, you want him to play, you want to be on the field if you're going to go first round. He just didn't, he broke the threshold of first round, but I don't know that he will be a first rounder when the day comes. Now, Tyler Newman, on the other hand, that guy is very exciting. He is one of the better safeties that we've scouted him. If you put him in other classes, he's still one of the top safeties, and then you really get to see like the, how close it is. But basically was perfect this year. Great tackle rate, no missed tackles basically. Interceptions. He's a ball hawk. Biggest problem with him, he had to do a little bit of reconstructive surgery on his knee. That's why he missed the combine. But at the same time, it was reconstructive. It wasn't a tear or anything like that. He was just trying to be proactive, basically. So he's an exciting player.
Yeah, and then last we skipped over, but I wanted to finish off this tier talking about the more polarizing guys. Obviously, Michael Penix Jr. at 37, JJ McCarthy at 34. They will probably go much earlier than this, especially JJ McCarthy. But they're in this range for a reason. They're projects. It's not necessarily like they're ready, or we don't know if they can necessarily hit their ceiling on the next level.
Right. So that's one's a project. One's a true project in JJ. And we've talked about this before, he should not start his first year. He should not play really his first year at all, no matter where he goes. But that's not necessarily going to happen. He might be thrown into the fire. And so that's my big thing with him. We've just never seen him where the game is on the line and it's on his back. And I want to see that. And so it's the same rant I give every time we talk about him. And I want to see him throw the ball better. He has the same pace. He has the same arc on the ball. I want to see him kind of be able to change up the ball as needed based on the throw he needs. With Michael Penix, he's a little bit older. He likes to throw the ball into coverage. I'll tell you that. He has one of the biggest arms, though, in this whole class. And he has enough ability to move in the pocket to help himself, I guess. But he's not going to run the ball, not going to be a runner by any means. He's just okay to me, like all across the board. I wish his wide receivers helped him out so much this year and really took him into that like Heisman-esque look. But I wanted to see more when I watched the tape of his receivers not having to bail him out the whole game, basically.
Yeah, and like you said, one of the bigger concerns is down here not only the age, but having multiple knee injuries, which is why it prolonged his college career.
Right.
When he was at Indiana, and
like
you said, and just because they're this low doesn't mean we wouldn't, positively react or grade somebody trading up into the first round to get them, especially Michael Penix, because he's kind of has a wider range of outcomes, whereas JJ has kind of been pinned in the top 10 somewhere. He's, been the fourth guy that most people are saying Minnesota or New York is going to trade up for. And he's one that's like, it's completely situational based because, yes, that is way too early for him. However, if you land in the spot that can help you maximize your abilities, then it's not going to look as bad of a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And they're two very different situations. I'll tell you about Minnesota. I love the situation for a rookie quarterback there. And then you got New York, who, if you decide with the $40 million quarterback that just lost his best weapon, second best weapon is about to retire, and then you don't have any wide receiver ones or even twos, that's not a situation that will help him.
No, absolutely not.
But either way, somebody like JJ would and should sit to help further his abilities.
Right.
But yeah, we'll jump into the top 30. Start off Peyton Wilson, linebacker. We absolutely love that. Just is an absolute football player.
Yeah.
In the middle.
He has been riddled with injuries over his career, and that's the biggest worry. That's the biggest point that everybody wants to make. Well, this guy, this happened and that happened. He's a little bit older. Well, I'll tell you what. He ran a 4.47. He killed the interviews. Made you feel like you wanted to go play football right then and there. He's just a football player, top to bottom. He can basically do everything too, which is pretty cool. He's a little bit taller, 6'4", but no 4. Was it I think it's 4.5% missed tackle rate. Okay, that's awesome. First off, he's a really good coverage linebacker. He can rush off the edge because of his height and his style. He really just doesn't do anything wrong, and he could be one of the steals because truly, if he was 2 years younger and didn't have the injuries, he's probably a top 12 guy. We're talking about him going, real early. Maybe not in this class because of the positional value, but he's still one of those guys where you're like, you could project him really early.
Mm-hmm.
And he will most likely fall out of the first round. So some team is going to get a really good football player that has a lot of intangibles that you just can't coach. And good luck. Good luck stop it. It's just a great pick no matter what you do.
Yeah, and then as we get into the top 30, pretty much all these guys are guys that we would be shocked if they did fall out of the first round. Well, he's one that we still feel like he's more likely than not to be outside the first round.
Right.
But we view him so highly that that's the value we think that you're getting when you pick him at 40 or wherever he goes.
Right.
That's how high we are on him. A lot of people are high on him as well. It's just age and the injuries. But there's nothing wrong with him as a football player. Going back a little bit to quarterback, Bo Nix is somebody that, he's our QB4. That's higher than most people. He's normally in the 5 or 6 range for other guys. And he's one that is a fringe first rounder. And it's kind of weird to find a fit. But, he's somebody that could very well go to 12 or 13, Denver, Vegas, or he could fall all the way out of the first round. Somebody can trade up for him.
Right. He's all over the place for sure.
Yeah. But, we like him as a prospect. He does a lot of right.
Yeah.
But it's situational based for him.
15-1 touchdown to interception rate. 90 plus QBR. I don't know, 4,500 passing yard. All the stats are there. You sign off on the stats. Leadership is there. He's a little bit older, but that gives him that a little bit, that leadership. We always talk about the perfect fit. Go play with Sean Payton. If the Broncos decide to take him at 12, I wouldn't be mad at them because then you're getting your guy, like we've talked about before. If they move back and get him, even better, in my eyes for them. But he's the guy for them to me. And I sent you something the other day. They're minus money to get Bo Nix in the draft. No matter where they pick him, it's
Just
one team is minus money for Bo Nix. Everybody else is plus money. The whole field is.
And that says even more because this isn't like a Drew Lock situation a couple years ago where, both of us had him going to Denver and he fell to the second round to Denver.
Yeah.
So we got the fit right, but we got the round wrong. Well, Denver doesn't have a second round pick. So they're projecting, hey, this team is going to stay there and take him, or they're going to move back and still take him.
Right.
Absolutely. And there's probably not going to be a lot of suitors that jump them to take him because I feel like they're higher on him than other teams are.
Right. Based on fit, based on the things we just talked about. So, yeah, I think 29, he's higher than they're all pretty much within 10 of each other. Of these 3 quarterbacks that we just talked about. and that's kind of how I see them. It's very tiered. It's the 1, 2, 3 tier, and then it's 4, 5, 6.
Right.
So
yeah, and so we'll jump. I'm going to group together a trio of Alabama players: J.C. Latham at 28, Willie McKinstry at 27, and then Terry Arnold at 22. Obviously, two corners that we're very high on. A lot of people have put Terry Arnold as the better of the corners, and I was one that kind of fought you a little bit to try to squeeze the gap a little bit between Kool-Aid and Terry because of how much we like Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Terry Arnold on Daniel Jeremiah's board right now is 9.
Mm-hmm.
So he's getting a lot of buzz. I just don't think I see it the same way that everybody else does. In the fact that, yes, he's been a really good corner for 1 year. But at the same time, he was targeted a ton this year. While Kool-Aid on the other side was only targeted 8%. I think Terran was double that. Double the completion, or almost 1.5 times the completion rate. Things like that. Like Kool-Aid was the better player this year, overall, to me.
Mm-hmm.
Terran Arnold had more interceptions. Some of them tip balls. We'll get into that, another time. But basically, both of these guys should be very close, if you ask me. They were on the same team. It wasn't like I had to go watch film on a different, I watched the same film and I just looked across the field. So, direct comparison, these guys are very close. Kool-Aid might be the better of the two in press man. He's not as fast, not as explosive on tape. You go watch, but on the field, with a broken foot, he outran Terry Arnold. Now, at the combine versus at a pro day, whatever, that's not my thing, whatever. But that's why we don't put the pro day times on there. But yeah, Terry Arnold and Kool-Aid are very close players. So I definitely think, we could even be closer to grouping wise. And then JC Latham, guy that we're actually much lower on. I have this feeling that he's going to need to be a guard at the next level. He's 6'6", 360. Has some issues in pass pro sometimes, and I think that can hurt him. And so I'm having that feeling, and every time I get that feeling about certain guys, and then they don't succeed, and then they move to guard 3 years later, and it's like much better fit. It's just kind of the guy I feel. I see. We've mocked him both times in our drafts to Baltimore, I believe. Well, actually, no, we actually left him out of the first draft mock. So the second mock, we mocked him to Baltimore. Perfect fit. If he goes to Baltimore, he plays tackle there, I think he succeeds.
And yet that's still 15, 20 spots lower than a lot of people like him.
Yes.
But let me ask you this question, because it's kind of interesting and it ties in two guys in this group. Troy Fatano and Graham Barton, both tackles that are projected to move inside.
Right.
If we're projecting J.C. Latham to be a guard eventually, and he's a higher touted prospect among other people, why is he still below those two guys who still haven't played those positions? Or Graham Barton has, but Troy has not. And we're projecting them to move inside, but yet we still have them higher than JC.
I think the biggest problem is the NFL projects him at tackle, and he will play tackle for at least 2 years. It's kind of the Evan Neal thing that's going on right now. So Graham Barton and Troy Fatanu are actually going to be better for at least the first 2 years of their career until maybe JC Latham moves inside. Then we have to see if JC Latham is as good of a guard or, that at that interior offensive line level as the other two. And at that point, you have 2 years on the contract, maybe a 5th year option. It's like my thing between the three of them is they're all close, but if they're all playing tackle, like if we had to group them all at tackle, I believe JC Latham is probably behind Troy Fatano, and Graham Barton's third. But there's no way Graham Barton's playing tackle. I'll tell you that right now. You can watch the film for 1 second and you see guard, center maybe, even all the way inside. So that's not even a good, But then if you think who's going to play guard, who's going to play center, right now, I think you might move JC Latham to right where Graham Barton is. They're like 1, 2, 3 tiered. But they're not going to move him. So it's like he's really hard to place for me when the NFL doesn't really see the same things that I see. And then also, if that does change later on in his career, well, then he probably would be a good guard. Especially at 360, a really good run blocker, heavy. He falls forward every time he throws his hands, type of thing. Gets off balance. But in a run blocking scheme, if he's down blocking, that's okay. I mean, he's putting all his weight. He's pushing. He's putting all his weight, feet, all the things. But that's my biggest problem with him right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we'll jump back 26 through 24. Lad McConkey, receiver that we absolutely love, doesn't have the numbers. You can't just look at the box score and just be like, why is he 26? You got to look at the tape and what he did at the combine and Senior Bowl, and then a couple of Longhorns, Byron Murphy, and Adonai Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Three really talented players that we really like. Kind of give me a tidbit of each one of these.
Well, I think if you look at Lad McConkey is the best natural number two receiver in this class. And a lot of people have a problem with that, I think. Acting like number twos are bad. You want to draft number ones if you're going in the first round. Mm-hmm. Well, I get that. I get that idea. But also, every good team has a number two. You look across the whole league. Mm-hmm. Pick any team except for maybe the Chiefs. I don't know how they figure it out. They just figure it out. They're fine. Rashee Rice was, I guess, their number two in this year. But you go to Cincinnati, T. Higgins is the number two. Well, that's a really good football player. You go to Tampa Bay, Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, as a number two, maybe doesn't outshine Mike Evans in any way, but he is the guy that you might want to call on third down. Every third down, you're like, hey, where's Chris Godwin? That's who I'm throwing the ball to. Lad McConkey kind of has all of that ability. And just because I say he's a number two, don't overlook him. He's definitely should be a first-round draft pick. He probably won't because you look for number ones. But as a number two, he's going to be a superior number two to other players. So.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. And then Byron Murphy, he's probably at this point, I would say the consensus top-rated defensive lineman. He's our number two. And we'll touch on number one in a little bit, or you can watch our defensive line rankings as well.
Right.
He's just a guy that's really highly, high potential, high motor, plays, 100% a lot, and a lot of his money is made on pressures.
Yeah, and he's also kind of a projection type of guy. When we talk about the other guy, Byron did it for 1 year. Mm-hmm. We wanted to see more. We wanted him to do it for longer. I mean, the year before he was okay. He was just a rotational piece, though. This year, playing next to Devondre Sweat, Devondre takes a lot of eyes off of you. So that has a little bit to do with it also for me. He still had 15% plus pressure rate for Byron. And I expect him, to be a really good football player. It's not that he's not, he's just not as high on our board because I think there are so many good players between him and then I do believe our number one interior defensive lineman has actually separated himself for the amount of time that he's played. And we'll talk about him in a second, but he is, one of the better players for multiple years at that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then A.D. Mitchell, obviously, he's a guy that, like Ladd, you can't really lean on his overall numbers to just assume, like, why is he this high? But he's just a guy that makes plays in the big-time moments, big-time games, and big-time situations. We've glossed over, 8 targets, 8 touchdowns in the red zone.
8 out of 9.
8 out of 9, I'm sorry.
We all know
and then the one target
you know
is
which one. But,
yes.
So,
yeah, it just really solid player. I actually think that he would be probably better served as being a wide receiver 2 instead of being your wide receiver 1, but he's a guy that is also being a projection. And I like the fit or it depends on the fit, but I like him fitting in with the modern day passing game.
Well, we've talked about, who his comparison is. It's T. Higgins. Mm-hmm. And T. Higgins could be a number 1 and could be a number 2. When Jamar wasn't in Cincinnati, he was a number 1. And was he good? Absolutely. But I think that Mitchell could take us, it's not that you take a step back, but it's just, your role. You're the number 2 option. And he did that at Texas. At Texas, he really wasn't the number one option. Xavier Worthy was most likely, more the number one option in that offense. But when you needed a situational guy that needs to go make the play, he did that. So that's something you can't overlook. Yes, he probably projects style, size, and all those things as a number one. But at the same time, if he goes to a team where there's already an established player, he's going to step in and be fine. He's not going to be one of those guys that has to be the number one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, so we'll jump on moving forward, going Amarius Mims, Jackson Parrish-Johnson, Jerzon Newton, a couple of beefy boys. We really like his prospects. Probably higher on Jerzon and Jackson overall than others, but everybody, is consensus on how high they are on them. We're just a little bit higher because we're more confident that they'll pan out in the next level.
Well, I do want to say, so Jerzon Newton has been kind of just been everywhere. He's number 8 on PFF's board. That's like really high. Mm-hmm. And then he's 32nd on Daniel Jeremiah's board. Well, we have right in the middle. So I think that's probably the way to put it. Honestly, it's just he's been so good that he hasn't done anything wrong. And guess what? The league is changing. Mm-hmm. Interior pass rush, interior defensive linemen are becoming, a commodity, and they're getting paid. And it used to be like this. I remember a stat. I don't remember it exactly, but it was like 20+% in like 2010 was the difference between an edge rusher's pay and a defensive tackle's pay. Now it's 6%. So it's closing, and the importance of the interior defensive line is becoming much larger.
Absolutely.
And he's been the best D lineman for the last 2 years. He's 2-time All-American, I believe. Big Ten defensive player of the year, not just defensive lineman of the year, defensive player of the year. Playing in Illinois, not one of these big schools. I can't overlook what he has done already at this point. And also, he's explosive. He's got the size. He's 6'2", 305. Like he's, got great hands. All these things that you want to see. So I'm probably higher. I'm excited about him. One of the guys that I would put some extra money on to be really good. You know what I mean? One of that thing. Jumping over to Amarius Mims, projection type of guy. But unlike other tackles that are behind him, he has of course, he has all the athleticism. He has the length. 36+ inch arms. He's 6'8", 340. Got all of that. But also, when I watch him play, he feels so much more comfortable in the pass game. Mm-hmm. He's very, very good when he's, setting and things like that. Good hands, waits, patient, able to play on an island. And that was some of the problems I had with other tackles earlier, like J.C. Latham, that they just aren't as capable and natural at that part of their game. So that's why Amarius Mims cracks the top 20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Jackson Parrish-Johnson, obviously somebody that we loved. You got to find two decimal points before you find another non-zero number for his pressure rate. This is just one of my favorite stats that we've researched throughout this process. But it's higher than most people will put, but I think it's just purely, people don't love putting centers as high.
Right.
But, he's one of our safest picks to pan out.
6'3", 240. Basically just didn't do anything wrong. Just was perfect. Senior Bowl, perfect. Combine workouts, pro day, just in season, just everything he's done has been amazing. And he's 21. Mm-hmm. He'll be 21 and a half when the year starts. Like, just hard to find a flaw. And if the flaw is the fact that he plays center, I'll take it.
Yeah.
If that's the problem, if he's 2 inches too short, he's 1 inch shorter than Troy Fautanu, who, here, let me give you those numbers because I think they're very important. Jackson Powers-Johnson is ranked 30th on Jeremiah's board, 24th on PFF, and not ranked for Mel Kiper. Mm-hmm. Now, you go to Fautanu, he's ranked 11th, Jeremiah, 9th Kiper, and 14th for PFF. So we're basically getting a guy that most people think should be a second round pick almost. And we're putting him, 2 spots higher than the guy that is supposed to go top 15. So, and we're okay with that, because if the real problem is the fact that he plays center, I'm okay. I'm good. Right. I'm good signing off on it. You know what I mean? So.
Right. Yeah. And then we'll jump to 17. One of our favorite overall players, the ultimate Swiss Army knife, Cooper DeJean. Um, you know, you can play him inside, outside, box, high, low. He also returns for you.
Yeah.
Like he'll just play football and play it at a high level for multiple years. And his biggest concern was just the injuries, broken leg that he was recovering from. Didn't participate in pro day, or I'm sorry, in the combine or the Senior Bowl, and then he finally got cleared, and then had his own personal pro day, and absolutely killed it.
Yep. Just guy that he's one of the greatest athletes I've seen. Just, basketball player. He has more points than Harrison Barnes in Iowa, all in high school basketball history. He's a top 5 track runner coming out of high school for the state. Like you said, he returns kicks. Was an All-American kick return or punt returner and kick returner. I get return specialist.
Mm-hmm.
He's, just been awesome. And there's really nothing bad to say other than the injuries, and the fact that he didn't play enough press man. Like, if you really want to make some issues, like, that's it. And to me, it's like, well, he's the best safety in this class. He's the best nickel in this class, and he's a top 5 corner in this class. And my favorite fit for him is if he goes to a team with the number 1 corner, because then you can do whatever you want. Because now you're like, okay, well, that's the outside corner. And if we get a team where we have to play Mike Evans, oh, well, we'll put our outside corner over there. And Cooper, you go play on Chris Godwin in the slot. You go do basically whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
He can rush the passer at times. He did that a little bit. He's just a good football player. And that's why 17, I wish I could put him higher. Like, truly wish I could put him higher, because he's just such a good football player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Jared Verse is a guy that we've talked about. So pro ready right now, and just a guy that probably he banked on himself coming back into the year. And while the team had success, his draft stock kind of fell a little bit. But nothing is wrong with him. 2-time All-American. He's just a year older now.
Yeah, the power that he possesses is just insane. You talk about him losing a little bit of stock. It has a lot to do with the fact that, he came back, and this class is so deep with the important positions. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I think he, lost that stock. But comparing, him to the guy on the other side from Alabama, Dallas Turner at 12, like, they're so different, but both of them are, Jared Verse is ready now, while Dallas Turner is still a project. Mm-hmm. So Dallas Turner's a little bit higher because of his athleticism, his age, and all those builds that he possesses. But Jared Verse would probably be my pick to be higher on the Defensive Player of the Year voting coming out this year, because of the fact that he's more pro ready. So
right, yeah, and then I guess we'll pair a couple of corners together. Nate Wiggins at 15, and then Quinyon Mitchell, our number 1 corner, at number 11. 2 guys that have just killed this pre-draft process, ready to play and win right now. And they've kind of, even though we talked about how close the range of top 5-6 corners are in this class, they've kind of started to kind of separate the gap a little bit from the rest of the field.
Right. So when you look at it, it's basically you have Kool-Aid and Tarian are a little bit lower, and they're grouped. Mm-hmm. And then you have Cooper DeJean, who's really hard to place because of his abilities that you just can't project as well. But then you go to Nate Wiggins and Quinyon Mitchell, and you're like, okay,
they're true corners.
Yeah, these are true corners. They're the press guys. They're competitors. If I'm gonna, Quinyon Mitchell is gonna be one of the guys where you're just like, this guy does no wrong. Mm-hmm. When he was film, absolutely nothing wrong. Played Toledo. Okay, fine. Goes to the Senior Bowl, kills it against not Toledo opposition. Goes to the combine, 4.33. Bench press, great. All of it. Jumps, everything. Field work is probably his best thing, though. And that's when that's when you're like, okay. So not only do we have like a guy that can athletically do it, but now we can see that he can do it on the field. Competitor, like I said, biggest attribute that you can say about him. Then you go down to Nate Wiggins, ran a 4.28, very fast, but his 4.28 did not define him. That was one thing we've talked about before is like, yes, if you run in the 4.2s, it hasn't actually panned out that well. But Nate Wiggins was really good at football prior to that 4.28. Showed it, and he also, he came in at 173, I believe. And then 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks later at his pro day, 186, walk out the door. So we know he can probably weigh 195 when he's playing weight, and he's not as skinny as he looks on that screen as much. So I'm excited about both these guys. Quinton Mitchell is awesome, though. Yeah, awesome guy.
Yeah, and then we'll jump to Brian Thomas Jr., who's kind of put himself in his own tier of wide receivers, led the nation in touchdowns as the wide receiver 2 on his team, but just an incredible player, very freaky athletic, and he should be going off the board at this range, and somebody's going to be very excited.
He is not a wide receiver 2. I know you said that. I don't.
No, I know.
But I'm saying, like, I know a lot of people, they want to say like, oh, Malik Nabers was wide receiver 1. No, it was a 1A 1B thing, because you go look at the stats. 17 touchdowns for Brian Thomas is, I don't know, probably 5 more than Nabers, which is saying a lot. He the most touchdowns in the NCAA this year, receiving, and he was electric in the deep part of the field. 78% of the passes thrown his way were caught, and he's a deep threat. And we keep harping on that because that is so impressive when you really think about it. A lot of guys, they might have 70% of their passes caught, but they're slot receivers. And so with this guy, he really outdid himself in the deep zones, and he killed it. I have nothing bad to say. He just keeps climbing up boards, and he's gonna possibly go higher than this. So
right, and then Olu, throughout this whole probably last calendar year, he's probably been in this 10 to 14 range, just as being a very solid left tackle projection. And people have kind of nitpicked about his hand size, and we don't know if that's really all that important. But once you pass him up, there's a significant decline in left tackles in this class. And, he's up there for a reason, because he can just step in and be very serviceable right away.
Yeah, he's one of the most natural pass blocking tackles in this class. He lacks a lot of the strength in the run game at times, but his ability to dance and play on the edge with really athletic guys coming at him is something that is pretty special. He does have a hard time with power. We saw it in the Ohio State game. But at the same time, this is probably, if you get him at 14, if you're New Orleans, you're really happy because you're getting a guy that can protect your quarterback and has a lot less question marks in the pass game, which is more important at the NFL level nowadays than a lot of the guys behind him. So,
yeah. So now we'll crack into our top 10. Laiatu Latu, our number 1 edge, had the best tape in the entire country, regardless of position last year. Nobody helped themselves more, and we really like him as a prospect. And even though he is, going to be 24, he's up this high because of how much we respect his game.
Yeah, he's just special. He's a special talent. Even though he's a little bit older, if he was basically how I kind of want it, like I've explained it in the past, is he has 20 pass rush moves and counters, right? There are a lot of 28, 30-year-olds that don't have that many pass rush moves and counters. Like right now, he can go out there and make an offensive tackle sees the same move twice in the whole game. Every pass set he gets, he sees the same move twice. Like that's crazy. So I just think, his best PFF grade ever, his insane pressure rates, they project, and they are going to, you're going to see them early in his career because he is so much older too. We just talked about Dallas Turner. He's a lot younger, and he's a project type of player a little bit more. Well, Latu is ready to do it today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's going to walk in and be like making plays immediately. So
yeah, and then number 9, Talise Fuaga, our top right tackle, best run blocker in this class. Just a mauler in the run game, and he did it against one of the best conferences in football last year. Despite Pac-12 dissolving, it performed as good, if not better, than the SEC last year.
Right.
And it showed, and he just did not disappoint.
Yeah, he's just captain, couple-year captain. Just gonna. He doesn't really do anything wrong. Still great athlete. Goes up against these really good pass rushers, including Latu, and didn't let up a sack against those guys. We worried about the thing you worry about with him is, can he pass block at the next level? Well, based on his tape and who he had to go against, I would say absolutely. I would say there's no question he can do it. Another thing too is, most of the time you want left tackles because they protect blind side. Right tackles are important and they're becoming more and more important, but they're not as valued. So if we saw Olu go before him, wouldn't be surprising because he's a true left tackle. But Fuaga's ready to go play right now, and he's, like you said, a mauler strength. He has all those like NFL ready capabilities like that. So he's an exciting player. He's one of the guys that I'm really excited to see at the next level, and I hope he goes to a couple teams.
Yeah. We'll group these next two together. Drake May from UNC at number 8, and then Jaden Daniels, our reigning Heisman winner, at number 7 from LSU. Very, very different stories with each of them. One is a late bloomer, 5-year starter that came from Arizona State and then finally blossomed into a Heisman Trophy winner. And then Drake May, one that can make every throw, has all the talent in the world, and then lesser program, has struggled in big moments, and that's the questions that we have are very different for both of these guys.
Yeah, so Jaden Daniels did it this year, 40 receptions, really impressive. But he's also older, like we talked about. He has a little bit of that difference maker, though. The capability to run is just something that this league has, taken in, and he is going to be one of the top 5 running quarterbacks off like immediately. Capability with his legs, I guess, is what I mean. But he also was a pretty good passer, and that's something that we talk about. It's not a comparison, but Lamar came out. He was the 32nd pick because we weren't sure if he could throw the ball. Well, his first year, he averaged between 70 and 80 yards throwing the ball per game. Jaden Daniels is going to give you more than that. So that's why he's, exciting, is because he has the ability to run, and he was solid throwing the ball. Progression-wise, he needs to work on that kind of stuff, being ready to anticipate throws, but he is a little bit of an X factor. Drake May on the other side, now he can read the field so fast. He gets off his first read, second read, third read, and rips it. Like you said, he can make every throw. He has the big arm, but I worry about his competitiveness. I worry about his mental more than actually his capabilities on the football field. We talk about a guy like Justin Herbert. We always wanted to see him win more, even still to this day. He's considered a top 10, top 7 quarterback, and he hasn't really done anything as a quarterback. So we'll see what happens with, of course, Drake May, if he can get that figured out, because he might go to a really bad situation. Both of them could go to New England and be in a really bad situation. I think that mental part of it will hurt Drake May more than it'll hurt Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, and then another thing I do want to bring up about Jaden that I think he needs to work on as a prospect, because there are no flawless players, no matter how we view them. But he is a very thin quarterback, 6'3", 200 to 210,
right,
was where he kind of played. And yeah, sure, he can put on weight, but he also didn't really do a great job at times of protecting himself, and he would run into hits. And there's multiple highlights of him just getting absolutely walloped. And in today's game, when quarterback is the ultimate, being protected from those big hits.
Right.
You have to be a guy that can, learn to slide or not take that chance. You look at Anthony Richardson and how much he impressed us, despite the, I guess, lack of a accomplishment in college, but just the physical traits, and then just not protecting himself, and then he doesn't even make it a month.
Yeah.
And then RG3 having a sensational rookie year, and then it all goes away because he doesn't protect himself. And then Jimmy G, guys like can game manage the heck out of the ball in the game and doesn't do anything wrong, and then yet he doesn't know how to slide, and he'll cut up the field when he's on the sideline and tears ACL. Like those are things also I think he needs to work on as well. Which that's can be correctable, but sometimes people's instincts take over and they don't get out of their own way. So I just want to bring that up as well because we know that both of these guys are very likely to be the second and third pick in the draft in some order.
Right.
That's something that we're going to have to be evaluating as they're selected and they're playing with what we expect to be Washington and New England.
Right.
Yeah. So and then jumping up to 6, Rome Odunze from Washington, probably the best contested catch guy in this draft. Very good with his body control, and it's very hard to I guess separate him between him and what we'll talk about in a moment, Lily Neighbors, because they're so different. But it's just kind of your cup of tea, your flavor for these guys.
Right. So Malik Neighbors is 5th, Rome is 6th, and it has a lot to do with the fact that it's really hard to separate them ability-wise, but putting one over the other, it's like you said, that day how you're feeling, I guess. Because with Rome, he can make every catch. He can come across the middle. He can run every route on the route tree. He's 6'3", 215. He's not like this like small guy like you'd expect. His ability reminds me of like a guy that's supposed to be 6'1", 180. But when he gets out there and does these things, you're like, wow, like he's a lot bigger than you expected. Running routes, getting open, contested catches, that size helps him in that aspect of it, of course. And then also just, he understands, he's the guy we talk about that's open when he's not open, right? So he has the ability he understands leverage really well. He understands like where to put his body so that when the ball gets there, he's the only one that can get to it. And that's something that is really hard to teach. I don't know where you teach it, honestly, how you learn it, because at full speed, it's one, walk through, it's one thing. At full speed, it's another. And this guy does it on every play. He's a deep threat. He's an underneath threat. He kind of just is everywhere. So he's a very exciting prospect. And I could understand if someone wanted to put him above Malik Neighbors. We didn't, of course, in this. But jumping over to Neighbors and our top 5, Neighbors is the explosion guy. He catches the ball, and you're like, what's going to happen? Like, every time he touches the ball, you don't know what's going to happen. He's not actually, like, he's ran a 4.37, I believe. Very fast. He runs, he's very quick, nuanced routes. He can play in any position, slot, outside, whatever you need him to do. But he's the guy you just want to touch the ball 6, 7, 8 times a game and just see what happens. We think about Tyreek Hill. When Tyreek Hill touches the ball, you're like, watch the screen, everybody, because you don't know if he's just going to automatically teleport into the end zone. Neighbors is that guy in this class. He could teleport to the end zone and on any play. Good offense, bad offense, good scheme, bad scheme. He catches the ball. He might make 5 people miss and find a way there. So that's why he's so exciting. And that big playability is actually what puts him above Odunze. And we've talked about this before, and I think you said it a while back, is like he's the only one in this class that can do that consistently. So that's why he's at 5.
Yeah, and then we'll jump to number 4, Joe Alt, our favorite and top-rated tackle and offensive lineman in this class. Massive human being.
Yes.
And just prototypical left tackle.
Yeah, he's ready. Pass blocking, run blocking, 21 years old. strength. He's 6'9".
6'9".
Like freakish size, but it's kind of funny. He's so proportional you couldn't tell. He looks 6'6" proportionally body wise, but that 6'9" helps him when he kicks slides and stuff and it's a long way around them legs. I'll just tell you right now. Going through him is damn near impossible though, because he is one of the best anchors in the class. And like I said, he has the strength to turn it from going backwards to you going backwards really quickly. His run blocking is even better than that. And so he's 4. He's higher than other people, and I don't understand it, but that's okay. I think that, in other big boards, I think a lot of people put a lot of quarterback, stress on the quarterback position, and we're picking best players.
Yeah, we're just ranking prospects.
This guy needs to be in the top 5 of any board, if you ask me.
Yeah, and kind of same sentiment, Brock Bowers. You won't see him this high on any big board,
I'll tell you.
But we're not afraid to admit when we see the greatest player at a position that we've ever seen as a prospect.
Yeah.
And he's that guy. He is that good of a prospect, and he deserves to be this high despite playing tight end because of how well and early he produced, and it's undeniable.
So he's ranked 7th by Jeremiah, Kuiper, and PFF. All 3 have him at 7th. I'm guessing that quarterbacks and wide receivers are sliding in front of him. But I will say, everybody wants to make an excuse for this guy. They want to say, oh, he's too small. Oh, this or that. Oh, this. I'm like, dude, there's nothing. He has not done a single thing wrong since he stepped on to Georgia's football field. He is a good run blocker. He's possibly the best receiving tight end we've seen naturally. Kyle Pitts, you could put in there, but he was a projection type of guy. This guy did it. 2-time Mackey Award winner, 2-time All-American. I mean, you could say, and you've said this. Actually, I'm gonna let you say it about the best football player on the field.
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear announcers, and we brought this up before, say that he's the best player in the country, and you don't ever see that at tight end
or in the SEC,
or in the SEC for that matter. So, yeah, we're that high on him, and everybody that does praise him, it's just they're afraid to put him over the second and third best quarterbacks that they're not confident will be there, but it's because they're quarterback. And I get it. Sam Laporta, second round pick that instantly has become a top 5 tight end. Like, you can get him later, and that's why he shouldn't be, drafted 3rd overall. But again, we're not doing this based on where he's going in the draft. We're doing it based on how we view them as prospects. If any one of these top 5 prospects were to bust or fail in the NFL, we would consider this ranking a failure.
Yes.
Because this is the most confident players that we are that will succeed in the next level. That's how we, break this down. And he's right in the middle because he's one of the safest prospects. He's just at a position that is a little bit more flexible with later round picks.
The top 6 prospects are all guys that I would just say, have Pro Bowl or Pro Bowl caliber players immediately. Like that's how I look at those 6. Like those 6 guys should all be considered Pro Bowl talents. Mm-hmm. Of course, then you have the quarterbacks and stuff after that, but like the top 6 are the Pro Bowl talents to me, like immediately. So that's kind of how I kind of wanted to, when you rank it, you have to have some idea of like why you're doing it. Those guys are, that style of play.
Right. Yeah. And then we'll kick it over to Caleb Williams. We haven't, touched on up too much lately on your new Chicago Bear quarterback. But he's number 1 on many people's boards, and it's because he's quarterback and he's going number 1 and all that stuff. We just like a certain player a little bit higher. But he's put together amazing tape and he's overcome a lot.
Yeah.
And I'll just kind of let you take away with it because the numbers are just outstanding, and he's had absolutely the perfect start to a career.
Yeah.
As a quarterback.
Honestly, there's not much more to say than what we've already said about him. I should have edited the Chicago Bear jersey onto him.
Yeah, you
basically. I mean, We will. How about that? I'll try to do that for the final mock draft coming up next week, or later in the week, and we'll do that. But yeah, he's pencil him in. He's number one overall. 72 touchdowns, 10 interceptions while at USC. He's just been really, really good at football ever since he took Spencer Rattler's spot at Oklahoma. And he never looked back. He had one bad game in 3 years. And everybody wants to call out that game. And they want to call out how he lost 5 football games. Well, guess what? That is not all on him. They did not have very good tackling on defense. They did not play well on defense. They didn't necessarily have some amazing offensive line. They had some pretty good skill players, but he also made those guys so much better. Yeah. Excuses.
Yeah,
excuses.
My only thing with him, we've nitpicked him so hard because he's the number one player, and people are just like, well, he's not. He shouldn't be. To me, it's just the mental and the personality. It's not everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
He's very flamboyant with his, likes and the way he acts, but it works. And if there's no locker room issues, who cares? Dennis Rodman won 5 championships, his second three-peat, and he's wearing, rings in his lip and going to Vegas in the middle of a season, and you accept it because he's going to do his job and do it the right way and show up when it matters. So, my thing is he's going to instantly vault himself into top 10 quarterback discussion. And once you get to a certain level, we will have to dissect every single little thing that you do and say, because that's how we separate Dak versus Joe Burrow. Josh Allen versus, at this point, Aaron Rodgers, who's kind of fallen, or, Kirk Cousins not being in a certain way or shape or form because of big moments, big games, and, you have to prove it once you're there. So, we can love you as much as we do as a prospect, but then you have to achieve from there.
I don't really have this big thought that he's not going to achieve, when the fact that he is going to the Chicago Bears. They have a trio of running backs, a really good offensive line, and now Keenan Allen and DJ Moore.
And they'll win 10 plus games. Lock it in, all your betting guards.
Yep.
It's the easiest bet that you can make right now. Is 8.5 wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, they might add another player. And that we don't think that should happen necessarily, but they could take Brock Bowers. They could have the second and the third best player in this draft class. They could. Roma Dunze might fall to them, and if he does, and they decide to take him, then they just have this he has all the weapons. We think, of course, they should take defense, try to get some extra picks, but at the same time, I'm probably not mad at them if they do. If they go Brock Bowers, yeah. Okay, good pick.
But yeah, we'll touch on that a little bit more later. We'll finish this up by talking about our number one player, Marvin Harrison Jr. A lot of people want to, make arguments for other receivers being close to him. We haven't really viewed it as that close. He's just a prototypical, he is so can't miss in an era of receivers that you can just bust out 20 pro ready receivers every draft. You can't really say for sure things about many receivers anymore. And he's as sure as I can remember coming into this league.
Yeah, style of play. He is a true wide receiver 1. He's, the best hands. He's one of the best, deep threats. He's one of the best, if not the best, contested catch players. Him and Rome are really close. He's basically everything. You just pick pick anything we talk about with receivers, and he's top 3. You can't go wrong here. He's also 6'4". That helps, a little bit too.
He is fast, even though he won't run a 40. Don't think he's not fast. He top 20 miles an hour.
Yeah,
how many receivers can do that?
He's got long legs, and he takes off, and you might think he's not moving that quick, but he's gone. So I don't know. Anybody that wants to bring him down, Jeremiah has him second, Kuiper has him third, PFF has him second. They're all on. Caleb Williams is number 1.
Who is top 2 for No, Kuiper.
Kel Kuiper has Jaden Daniels number 2 because quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, sure.
But this is the number one.
We'll
guy.
Judge him more later.
Yeah, it's fine.
There's so much to talk about with him.
To break down, but just don't overlook it. If he's not going to be top 3 most likely, but if at 4 in your Arizona, you should take him. If you're 5 in your the Chargers and he falls to you, take him. If he somehow falls to 6 and you're the Giants, that's the fastest card I've ever ran in. So
don't let Chicago trade up for him, because I've seen a mock where they move up to 5 to take him, and it's just like don't let that happen.
That would be dumb. I'm sorry, but like the Chargers moving back to 9 means they miss out on both Marvin Harrison and Joe Alt, most likely.
Yeah.
So no, that doesn't make any sense. But hey,
and you're not getting the additional first like you would in the Minnesota trade, but
yeah.
Okay,
well, let's not even go there because I don't even think that's reasonable thing to do. But so that's our top 50. We put this together. We tried to compare them to other people because we think that the best in the business kind of know what they're talking about, and we want to make sure that we are doing similar things, but we're definitely not going to be exactly the same as some of these guys. So.
Right, yeah, and we appreciate y'all watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out our previous positional ranking videos leading up to the draft. It is next week. We are almost here. Very, very exciting. And then also, once again, we're going to be live streaming for the first time on draft night. It'll be a big challenge and it'll be a lot of fun doing this and reacting to the draft as it unfolds. So it's really exciting, and we're constantly growing, by the day, getting more and more active on social medias and stuff. So please keep on supporting and comment. We want to start interacting with you guys and start these discussions like we've intended to do.
Yep, we're almost there. We've only been doing this, since the end of February, and it's been a crazy ride, getting to this point, doing the research and doing all these things that we already do, but doing it so that we can present it and talk to y'all through the camera. We'll be moving out of this room and hopefully into a different studio across the hall.
Yeah, other side of the wall.
Yeah, and hopefully we get more people. We're going to upgrade some things, and hopefully we'll make it look nice, and maybe we'll be able to do it for the draft.
Yeah.
So.
And then once the draft's over, we don't stop. We're going to start coming out with more content. May will be a little slower, but fantasy season is right around the corner, and then we got to start doing our unimportant rankings and historic stuff. We'll get into some trivia and some games and all that stuff. There's so much like untapped things. And we're just getting started, so I can't wait to show you guys what we got in store.
And then fantasy football.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we put Cam on the spot, so we'll be there very soon. That's crazy. It's moving quickly. But we really appreciate y'all being here, and y'all have a good one.
Yep. Take care, guys.